Questo è un luogo che genera dialogo,
Qualcuno che si impegna, che si batte.
che approfondisce la conoscenza e sostiene la fiducia. È un crocevia dove si incontra chi desidera il vero, il bello, il giusto e il bene. È una testimonianza di speranza nel cuore ferito del presente. E tutto questo esiste anche grazie a te.
Buonasera a tutti.
A very good afternoon, everyone. Please take your seat because we are ready to start. I would like to thank the Rimini meeting and our guests. I'm going to introduce them shortly. Thanks to our guests because they've kindly accepted to dwell with us on an issue that has been characterizing our activity. The title of this session is Artificial Intelligence in Human Work. What kind of business do we want to become? This is a topic that has become everyday talk in our daily life. Compagnia delle Opere and the Rimini meeting has been organizing for 3 years a series of sessions on this topic, and this is the very first one of the ones we're going to organize this year. So the title contains a challenge. What kind of enterprise, what kind of business do we want to become? We're not only going to address whether artificial intelligence is going to work on our behalf. We know that some activities, that some businesses will become automated, others will change, new businesses, new enterprises will start. However, we would like to stress that this is something that has not yet been written. Much depends on us and our decisions. AI can be used in many different ways. It can be used to do the very same things that we do, looking only at the efficiency aspect, or it can be used to provide better services and products, to create new jobs, to, in a way, give time back to people in order for AI to do the repetitive work, in order for people to take on their responsibilities and establish better relations. And that's why the most important question is not so much what the machine can do. We've already understood that it can do a lot of different things and much better than we do. But rather the question is what we're going to decide to make out of this great power that machines can promise. When, for example, you have an algorithm has to select a candidate, assess performance, or maybe govern autonomously a certain installation, who's responsible for that? If we recover time, if we gain in productivity, who is the person that actually possesses this time? When we decide that we want the human to be in the center, this is something that everybody now basically says, how can we check that this truly happens, for example, in finance, in investments? And what kind of indicators do we use to check whether this is not only a slogan, but our real preoccupation as businessmen? So the title of the meeting of this year apparently has nothing to deal with what I'm saying, but apparently it has a lot of what we do, the love which moves the sun and the other stars. So love is not so much a word that we attach upon what we do, but it rather guides our activities. It helps us recognize the other not so much as a cost or as a means, but as an asset as something good. So AI forces every company to make what truly moves them more evident. It casts light on what really has a value and what we want to basically sacrifice. So sitting with me this evening, there are 5 outstanding guests. On my left, we have Francesco Seghezzi, the president of ADAPT. I'd like to kindly ask you for a big round of applause for every one of them. Francesco researches the relationship between innovation, technology, and the competencies, especially for young people. And he will help us understand what is really happening in the labor work. Sitting next to him, we have Rinaldo Pietro Platti, the CEO of Prolink, of the Prolink Group. Rinaldo is a work consultant, and he has an outstanding experience in HR management, and he will talk about tangible decisions. And we have Cristiana Scelza. Cristiana is the president of Valore D, and basically she's working in the field of marketing intelligence for the group Prisma Europa, and she'll help us understand the risks and opportunities of this transformation. Then we have Mr. Dave Board, principal technology strategist at Yokogawa. He was awarded by his multinational company as the Employee of the Year for his professionalism and his great work and studies. He deals with human-machine interface, digital twins, and he will address the frontier of industrial automation where machines are substantially, basically, autonomous. Dave has enthusiastically accepted our invitation through Chiara Leva from the University of Dublin. So he came, and he will be tomorrow. He'll be here tomorrow as well because he will meet the Pope. So a very big round of applause for him. We're really happy that you're here. And then we have Mr. Natale Brescianini, a very dear friend of Compagnia delle Opere, and he will comment on the many topics we're going to listen to. So, Francesco, I'd like to start from you. Please, could you kindly frame the state of the art in the world of work and address issues that are of interest for young people, always bearing the encyclical into account. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very happy that I have been given the chance to illustrate a number of ideas, which are provisional ideas. We're living in changing times, and these are rapidly evolving times. I'd like to basically make comparisons with the encyclical in my brief intervention. I'd like to start from the title of this session, which is a title that kind of negates the main approach to artificial intelligence, which is a deterministic approach. Many people tend to say things are bound to go in this specific way. We have technology. Technology is powerful and dominant and so difficult to understand that it will inevitably govern all processes. But actually, the title of this session is Which Business? What Business? So basically this focuses on the possibility to decide. There are some concepts I'd like to, in a way, address. There can be activities, activities which are more exposed to automation, but they not necessarily are. So basically, my role is exposed. I could have used artificial intelligence, but actually Paolo asked me to speak. So he deliberately decided not to replace me with artificial intelligence. So he made a decision. Maybe he made a mistake in this case, choosing me over artificial intelligence, but he decided not to automate my speech, and so he decided not to replace me. And this implies that there's always a decision at stake. We're always dealing with a decision. whenever it comes with technology, we're always dealing with technology, with a decision. Actually, with artificial intelligence, we're making a step forward. We're not only deciding whether to automate something or not through artificial intelligence. We are deciding to, in a way, rely our decisions to another subject. I've been listening to a lot of statements these days. Many people say that AI is an agent and not a tool. Others, for example, say that it is a player, and so on and so forth. Anyway, AI is oftentimes mistaken as a being with a conscience, because apparently it behaves in the same way with which we behave with other people, because our AI communicates, it entertains a dialogue with other players, with LLMs, through LLMs and prompts. So this is a tool that we can decide to replace something else, but oftentimes we entrust entire whole decision-making processes to a player that then autonomously behaves with reference to a given choice, but with reference in general to a lot of choices. And I have a provocation for you. Based on what the Pope has said, I think it is clear that the human being is at stake today. We, in our daily governance, in our daily management of businesses, we have often forgotten what the true potential of human beings is. And oftentimes it is more convenient to use technology today rather than carrying out an activity, the activity to rediscover the human potential within organizations. And that is because and this is often and clearly said by the Pope, we have reduced human potential to mere efficiency. So if input-output goes to the advantage of technology, oftentimes we choose technology because we consider human beings as some kind of a machine like the others. And if man does not perform as technology, it is technology that is preferred. The Pope is provocative in this respect. He states that this is not true. There is an ontological basic difference between man and machine, and man has an option in this respect. So there is this primary element. You may decide not to use man, and that's a choice, that's a decision. It is an anthropological, moral decision. And at the same time, there's lots of literature that tells us that this is not only a moral choice. If technology can replace man today, still it is it finds it very difficult, it finds it hard to create new things. Because this implies not only replacement decisions related to replacement, but also decisions related to basically predictions, so to say. So the Pope says, this is Pope 156 of the encyclical, which is very provocative, because you may not agree with that. You may say this is the option of man. Under point 156, the Pope says that from an organizational standpoint, in companies, you should not intervene after work has been transformed, but you have to intervene, you have to act before. Before introducing certain technologies, you have to carry out an assessment of the possible impacts on workers, on people. And if these impacts are negative, then you can question a technological innovation process. And I believe that this is exactly the point where, like, was said to St. Paul, we will listen to you on this, maybe on another occasion. I mean, this is an element, this is a point in which we should really question ourselves. And I believe that this is what's truly at stake today. In other words, the possibility of choosing man, of choosing the human being, truly choosing human being. And in his encyclical, the Pope is helping us to come to the very end of this decision, so that this decision is not just reduced and limited to a moral principle. This means that we have to plan technology and human work together. there is not necessarily a consequence, for example, that you first plan technology and then you will assess the impacts on man. The two things have to be considered simultaneously in a synchronous way. This means that we have to anticipate the training of people. So the training of people in this respect should not happen afterwards. It has to be planned before. And when the skills are there, when the skills are ready, then, only then can you introduce technology. But this is something that, unfortunately, we do not do. Oftentimes, the problem is raised afterwards. And people oftentimes become redundant. And then there's a third element, like Paolo said before. There has to be a clear option on what to do with productivity, with the productivity gains we have. There's one thing that AI does, which is basically helps you save time. There is an initial saving. So what can we make of this saving? People have more time. So what do they do with this extra time? Should they be left sitting in front of their Netflix series, or should we rather introduce new added value activities for them to be allocated? Oftentimes this is done only to make existing processes more efficient, but no new processes are created. The other big question in this respect is actually that we should think about where we can allocate these people with new processes. There's many more things that could be said, but I'd rather stop here. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, because you've correctly introduced the many topics. This is no theoretical things. These are topics that are helping us in understanding not only the quality, but also the criteria of the things that we do. So Rinaldo, Prolink. So Prolink has explicitly chosen to opt for this statement: artificial intelligence completes and it does not replace the work of people. Can you make an example of an activity that you decided to automate, and can you make an example of another activity that you decided not to automate because you wanted it to remain? So as Francesco said, the human being can choose. We at Prolink have started agentic AI automation processes, so a kind of artificial intelligence that carries out sequential processes. So basically, we're talking about the true automation in sequence. And then we decided to stop at a given time. So the decision-making control of any activity is the responsibility of the human being. And that is because we wanted the human being to be central, to play a central role in his or her communication with the machine, but also because we're talking about an automation process that entails a number of risks. There's a European regulation in force imposing the human oversight on activities. And this is applicable to all high-stake processes. For example, the ones that Francesco mentioned before, like, for example, the recruitment on people. If there's biases, I might, for example, decide certain people to be hired. Or, for example, the assessment that can, for example, decide over the rejection of a given worker because he or she can be believed to be scarcely efficient. Of course, much depends on how you apply the prompt. So the human being in the process must always be the one who decides first if the communication language is transparent. So the man-machine language must be accessible to everybody. So basically, the human being must have the capacity of interrupting that communication if the values are not there. Because actually, artificial intelligence is fed through a library of data, and we are the ones who give certain data to the artificial intelligence. So if we give, for example, data containing violent images, of course the answer will contain violent images, but the responsibility lies upon us because we have provided the data in the first place. So that means that it is the human being who has to make the decisions. There are some dashboards, and these dashboards are ultimately the result of a process that is basically supervised by the human being through a qualitative library of data. That's fundamental. If we give, for example, a little child wrong models, well, that child might be induced to think that that's true data. Artificial intelligence will never answer no. They either give a right answer because it relies on the right library of data, or it will give you a seductive and appealing answer, but a wrong one because it is based on the wrong data. So there is a relationship with the machine. In this case, the communication is no longer a communication between colleagues. In this case, we're dealing with communication between colleagues and a machine that entertains relationship with the others. So this is a change. And in this respect, training is paramount. And that is because the reference model in our communication is central. However, the central role of the human being is always there to stay. We should never forget that artificial intelligence does not judge over good or bad. It does not decide over the sense of the meaning of things. Ultimately, we are bound to suffer from the consequences of this. So from this standpoint, we as entrepreneurs decided to stop at a given point. Because at that point, the machine supports human beings. It is a collaborator to human beings. And our company does consultancy. And we are the very first ones who are at risk. So the paradox is that we have to decide whether we are basically opting and supporting the enemy or the foe, or supporting the collaborator. So this is a very topical theme, and it can be governed. If it can be governed, it must be governed in our view. This is, of course, a choice of ethical nature. And it is a choice that cannot be left only in the hands of human beings, but rather everybody's involved. So platforms, international regulators of the systems, all of them have to support us to provide uniformity of action. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Valore D.
Now, Cristiana, with Valore D, you have been monitoring workplaces for years with a particular focus on equal opportunities. We have heard that algorithms learn from past data, and the risk is to mirror and, unfortunately, amplify old prejudices. How can we avoid that this transition in which we are may create new inequalities in terms of gender, age, and how can this be used as an inclusion lever instead? Thank you, Paolo, and good evening, everybody. It's been really interesting to listen to what Francesco mentioned about the encyclical, especially on the preparation of a business, because every time we talk about artificial intelligence, we see these images of successful movies like 2001 Space Odyssey from 1968, or Blade Runners from 1982, or The Matrix in 1989, where artificial intelligence can take it over human beings and even try to kill all humanity. But I think it is opportune to remember that this is science fiction, because it's not AI that is making the decision. It depends on who's governing it. So we can be prepared. But who are we talking about? It is the leader. So great responsibility falls on the corporate leadership, in the sense that inequality, whether it is about gender, age, culture, doesn't come from a digital tool or cannot be corrected by a digital tool. It must be there before enacting tools like this. As a corporate leader, my aim has to be very clear from the very beginning, because AI and all technology amplifies whatever comes in front of it. If it doesn't have a clear vision, it will amplify these weaknesses. This weakness, instead, if the vision is clear, it can become a very powerful lever. I'll give you some examples. When we talk about equality in career planning or in emphasizing seniority, and we are a company seeking digital tools to manage these processes. Well, it is there that the aim, that is equality in career planning or emphasizing seniority, becomes the choice criterion. That is, I may work on an algorithm or refer to a supplier. I have to know how it is validated, what kind of population is being used to validate it. Have we included part-time jobs? Have we included people with more than 50 years of age? Have we included career interruption cases? This is an important vision of the leadership that must be there before utilizing the tool. So that will set all the clear assumptions and give the clear vision of its direction. So technology is a tool, and I repeat, it depends on who governs it. How can it be turned into an inclusion tool? Just like with other things and technologies, one must know it. And we have to start from the top. Gallup data tells us that in the US, only 19% of leaders, that is, people with a leadership position, uses AI tools every day, with respect to 69% of the rest of the population. But if I am in charge of a business, I have to know the limits, not to become a technician, not to take care of that kind of management, but I have to know about the limits and the opportunities and to know whether that tool is appropriate for my strategic directives. So, leadership and competence. Frankly, these are fundamental at any time. I would have talked about the same thing if we had been talking about demographic transition. That doesn't change. Remember, those movies that we have in our mind are about science fiction. We can dominate technology. We get to Rimini with a practical guide, which is called AI Equity Compass, which is a collection of best practices of our companies. Just like the case I have mentioned, how the company enacts leadership and competences to manage digital transformation and avoid exclusion, and above all, it tries to make artificial intelligence an amplifier and a lever of a good development of a company. Thank you, Cristiana. What you mentioned is really important. It is one of the most important elements in the Compagnia delle Opere. We always say that conscience and knowledge are fundamental, otherwise wrong decisions may be made. Now, over to you, Dave. You make a clear distinction between automation and autonomy. In your IA to IA model, you get to consider systems that operate in full autonomy. We talk about level 5. However, if I remember well, in one of the latest slides, the last slides in the works that you shared, there was an open question. How can we keep the human in the loop when operations are autonomous? That is, in a real system, in a concrete system like yours. What does it mean to have the human in the loop concretely when the machine can make a decision by itself autonomously?
Thank you very much. So So first of all, two words. We have automation and we have autonomy. Automation is the machine, the computer can do a set of instructions. Those set of instructions are predefined and they will just go through step by step. Autonomy is the machine, the AI, is actually monitoring, observing, and then it learns, and then it will change key process parameters, and those key process parameters will be used to optimize the plant or the process. What human in the loop isn't, it's definitely not an operator or a human clicking approve on every single action the AI does. It's inefficient, and what it does, it puts the human, he just becomes disengaged. So literally he becomes click happy. So as he moves on, he clicks every single approval. This is just totally inefficient. He will become very, very low situation awareness, and he will not just stop being a judgment and authority in the approval process. So in AI systems, the human has to have judgment, authority, and accountancy. They have to be deliberately designed into the system. And in a real plant, human in the loop or human on the loop, a human in the loop is working within, let's say AI works within a bounded envelope. So the envelope, he has set limits of which the AI can work in. This creates meaningful situation awareness. It can help the situation awareness for the operator. This can be sometimes in the loop, so it's very, very critically or safety critical processes. Maybe you want a human in the loop authorizing what the AI is doing every single step. The other way of doing it is human on the loop. Now, human on the loop is the AI works very quickly, does what it's meant to be doing. However, the human has oversight into what the AI is doing and can intervene if the AI steps outside of those loops. There is another aspect as we move forward. Remember, this is a timeline, so there is another aspect, and IEC SC42, which is a standards committee for AI, is working on human AI teaming. So this is full collaboration between the human and the AI. So what we must do, we must look at risk, and we must match the risk to the level of what the AI can do. So if it's low risk, it can be overturned, then we can let the AI work in what the AI does best. If it requires human judgment, or it's in a safety critical environment, or it's a decision that can impact seriously the environment or something like that, then the human must have the authority itself. If we look at Industry 4, Industry 4 was collecting data, very, very heavily technology dependent, but then you use that data that you've collected to optimize the plant or the process. As we move forward, we will see Industry 5, which places humans, it's a human-centric way of dealing with AI and smart machines. So it's humans working in collaboration with AI and smart technology, so you're empowering the operators, the human. Thank you.
Dave.
Thank you, Dave. Now, Rinaldo, let's imagine that we have artificial intelligence, and in the company we want to recover 30% of the time that is used in some processes. As we were saying before, who owns that time? Is it just cost reduction, optimization, further competitive pressure, or is it further training, further quality in the service for the clients? Tell us about that. In a perfect world, I would like to mention the last points you mentioned, that is upscaling and professional development, but I have to be practical and pragmatic. After 25 years of experience in consultancy, I see many companies, many leaders that automatically connect time saving with cost saving, so which is the saving, it is human capital. But I say that process that 3 people were involved in, and I would have to pay 50,000 euros a year, I can replace that with artificial intelligence with a prompt that is not so expensive. So those 3 people are redundant. That is what should be avoided, really. As I said, I try to be pragmatic, but there are entrepreneurs that don't embrace this vision. They don't put the human at the center, and they would immediately think just about profit and efficiency. But to avoid all this, I'm not enough. As an entrepreneur in my individual company, a collective choice is necessary, starting with the programmers and the owners of technological platforms and regulators. It's not just about national regulators. There must be an international regulation setting some rules. And there's also greater cost. I mean, all those euros cannot be just profit in the hands of the entrepreneurs. The entrepreneur must give back, at least in part, maybe in the form of subsidies or by setting a levy on artificial intelligence. That kind of saving must be given back to the community so that those people that have become redundant can have the opportunity to be reskilled again and to take the jobs that AI will propose to us, because the speed is so high now that we can't even know today what the job demands will be in the world of work. So that's why we need to have an active approach. The extra profit should be given back to the community in the interests of human beings. So we have to start thinking effectively. Entrepreneurs can be a bit cynical. Some people should be laid off because of AI. No, this is mentioned today in some companies. These are always production processes that are not so extensive, but Italy's jurisdiction stated that it is legitimate to have layoffs because of artificial intelligence. I would like our legislators to change this so that there are greater costs in these processes compared to other technologies, so that this difference can be reused to reskill other people. And support should not be used just for the typical like English language training courses. No, it should be focused on the language that is necessary to dialogue with the machines. And the content must be adjusted to our changing times. So this is not just valid locally. This must be valid internationally. Otherwise, there will be great social discomfort and issues. Work is not just a subsistence activity. It is an environment where human beings develop their relationships, their knowledge of the others. They become people outside their affective environment, so without particular filters, with their critical capacities. So human beings must have the possibility to continue to grow in their own development, in their own dimension, and for this, work is fundamental. That must be central. But for that, some shared rules are also necessary. where greater costs, greater obligations are there so that humans still are central part in the process. Thank you, Rinaldo. These are great ideas that we will consider as associations. Cristiana, you guided important industrial realities. You still do that. You have great experience. So can you tell us more about the kind of leadership that is necessary for building the business that we want, and how can new generations be educated to deal with this transformation? Well, yes, I mentioned that before, because especially during this period of digital transformation and demographic transformation, considering longevity and long careers, the features that really make people stand out are accountability towards common beings, despite individual personal interests, and then balance and centeredness and competence. These are three fundamental features. I'll begin with the accountability. Technology doesn't replace leadership, it just puts it to the test. The more exploitation is enacted, the stronger it is, the clearer the vision where you want to go should be. If you want an immediate result now, well, you can lay people off. The tool can let you do that. But if you want to guide your company through a sustainable development model over time, you don't lay people off, and you do upskilling and reskilling of resources that had gained experience over the years, and you don't just let them go. So accountability is a clear ultimate objective. Then balanced, centered, and humble, which is on the same plane as competence. If you do not know the tool, you can't do anything. Absolutely. You have to be able to understand the limits and opportunities. As I was saying before, why is it so? Let's say I have a performance system in my company with which I assess the use of some software tools that are fundamental for my production processes. Well, I also have to know, because I understood that by studying artificial intelligence, that targeted training is required. Without this, I cannot assess, because it is not the algorithm that is discriminating against gender, age, or culture. It is simply judging who can and who can't use a particular tool. So I may cite women. My generation is called the sandwich generation between children and parents. Time for us is precious. According to the Gender Equality Index of IGEX 2025, time is mentioned as the most critical domain immediately after power. Time is really a luxury. Well, artificial intelligence enables me to save time, so I go back to the question, what are we going to do with that time? To eliminate all the routine activities and to enable part-time female workers to get specialized in using some software that are fundamental in my managing activities. So how can new generations be trained? We have to start with the mind. Whether for good or bad, field attitudes influence a whole generation. If I don't demonize a tool, if I understand its limits, I can convey this attitude to the rest of my group, to the corporate population that will be more open to use it and to learn to use it. This way, we can keep this sort of fear of AI away. We have to study, we have to understand, and from there we can manage, because AI by itself cannot do anything. Now, Dave, with artificial intelligence, we have data that are offered more and more rapidly and in real time, and also decisions are made faster. In this supersonic context, where would it be useful to trace a line between automatic execution and the ultimate human accountability, if there should be a line? And as Francesco said, because this is important too, we have to think before this transformation is a process in which planning and execution should almost considered at the same time. How can this happen according to your experience?
Okay, thank you for the question. So, first of all, there's two words. There's execution and responsibility. As you said, the AI can do things very, very quickly, can be left alone, and it can quite happily work on its own. However, an algorithm doesn't carry responsibility, so an algorithm cannot hold moral, legal, or any accountability at all. This is where the human comes in, so human oversight. So if you look at the 4 tests, if you want to automate a decision, a very 4 key steps. So the first step is consequence. So what happens if it goes wrong? Very important. Reversibility. Can it actually be reversed? And can it be reversed in a suitable time scale? The context. Do we actually know what the operating situation is? So it's very important. The AI will understand what it's doing. It will do it very quickly, as we said. However, if without the human insight into what's happening, it means nothing, to be honest. So the human carries the authority, okay? So where does the residual risk lie? Okay, if you say, can the AI make the decision or can the human make the decision? If it's a low impact decision, then the AI can do it quite happily. However, when we step up, so we look at safety critical systems, and remember that we must not ever in the process industry go and affect the safety systems that protect us all. So there's been some huge accidents in terms of safety systems. So those decisions are left for the human. So when you design the system and you look at all the inputs, guardrails both for training and runtime of the AI are extremely important, okay? For instance, we have our company has a permit to work system, a piece of software that is AI and a knowledge graph. We limit the training of that AI so that it's only using company safety policies, or it's only using regulatory documents that are used for that purpose of training the LLM, the AI itself. That way you're keeping the guardrails in place, so you're constricting where the working envelope is for the AI itself. So by defining the operating intent and what the AI can do, we're still keeping the human in place. If we look, so very interesting what the other experts have said. We're all in agreement, really. As we move forward along the timeline to fully autonomous operations, we're going to I believe we're going to see 3 areas. So we're going to see the future enterprise has got autonomous operations. This is AI, robots, digital twins doing what they do best. However, the humans have an important role in that they have to carry the authority and set the intent and understand the consequences of what the AI is actually doing. So going to the 2 points here, you cannot just buy an AI and say, this is my workforce replacement strategy. It just does not work. You have to take the worker along the journey. What that means is that you provide the tools, be those tools AI, so that the worker becomes a connected worker. So the worker is connected, they are empowered to be able to make critical decisions. The AI filters out all the noise, they can guide the operator. However, the last judgment and the last decision is with the human. So the bottom line of this, and I'm just about to finish, the AI should be beside the operator, not replacing the operator. That way you keep the human a high level of situation awareness, you keep governance, you keep authority, all the contextualization of the data, the operator can make the decision very, very accurately. Thank you, that's my answer.
Grazie a te.
Thank you. Thanks to you. It is reassuring that an avant-garde, a cutting-edge Japanese multinational has such levels of awareness. Now, Father Natale, can you please comment on the many interesting things we've heard? You can talk about whatever you want. Actually, CDA, Compagnia delle Opere, really played a trick on me. They had me speak at the very end of this outstanding panel of people, and plus, I always try and defend myself by saying that the person dressed in a white gown will not speak today, but rather tomorrow. So that's my way of replying. Anyway, to sum up on the many interesting things that have been said in this session, I would like to, in a way, start from my perspective. I am a Camaldolese Benedictine monk, and this year I've basically am celebrating 30 years ever since I've become a monk, and 20 years ever since I've started talking to businesses. The term decision, decide, choose, these terms have been frequently used. And these are basically what we term as discernment. This is typical of many religious groups. Today, this is what we need more than anything else, the ability to discern. And plus, the Benedictine tradition uses another very interesting word, which is typical of leadership. It's the typical word used by the abbot. In Latin, it is the so-called discretio. Discernment and discretio share the same etymology. Discretio means the right measure. In a world characterized by endless possibilities, you need people who have the right measurement of people, who can find the right measurement of people. And Rinaldo before said exactly this. I mean, if you save money, well, clearly you have to reinvest that money for the community. This is the measure that we have to give ourselves. We should give it to ourselves as a society, as a community. But what do we need to be able to discern and to become people who can understand what's the right measure of people? There's another term that comes to my mind. It's the stabilitas. It's the term that Benedictine actually use often. There's two types of stability. One is a very personal one. There's a very personal type of stability. We need centered people, because a human being is not in the center of anything. AI, according to the great thinkers, is the fourth narcissistic wound that we as human beings will have. We're no longer at the center of the universe. We're no longer the center of creation, because we share our DNA with many other animals. We're no longer the center of our decisions, because we're not rational. We are emotional beings. And now we have the fourth narcissistic wound of the human being, which refers to knowledge. So knowledge and language apparently are no longer owned by us, because for the first time we have agents So for the first time in history, we as human beings have somebody who basically whom we speak to, who replies to our statements, and this being is not human. And then there's this stability pertaining to context. Pope Leo, with Magnificat Humanitas, with this encyclical, which I'd like to say is not an encyclical on artificial intelligence, but rather it is an encyclical on how to guard and how to take care of the human being in the era, in the age of artificial intelligence. So in this encyclical, Pope Leo asks for a very strong stance to be taken, with two images taken from the Gospel, from the Bible. And I know that this is something that all participants in Compagnia delle Opere have already done, basically have meditated on these two passages, on these two excerpts of the Bible, which is the Tower of Babel and the New Jerusalem in Nehemiah. In the Tower of Babel, there is a wonderful comment by a rabbi which is about 800 years old, and this is a comment to an excerpt which is about 2,000 years old. In other words, there is this strong temptation that has always characterized the human being. It is said that there were workers coming up on the one side to bring the bricks that were needed to build the Tower of Babel, and they wouldn't go down from the other side. While they were going up, according to this concept, if a human being fell down, nobody would stop, but the process would continue. If a brick would fall, everybody would stop, they would cry on the brick and say, who's going to replace that brick? So this is a form of economic action, and in this model, the human being is no longer the end. The human being is the means. So technology must always be the tool, the means. We know that artificial intelligence is very powerful today. It is not neutral, as Pope Leo says. Those who design and finance and build artificial intelligence have an idea, a certain idea of society and human beings, and this idea is not neutral. So this idea of an economy that actually suffers because we no longer have a product, a brick, and does not cry if a human being goes down. On the other side, we have Nehemiah, where basically faced with a difficult situation, well, they cries, listens to the situation, and everybody is involved. So there is a diffused responsibility in the setting up of society. So even the walls that are built are needed to safeguard, to protect the weakest. So we need to choose between an economy that is not interested at all in human beings, so a form of efficiency without a face, and an economy where there's no waste. No waste whatsoever. So that's the kind of stabilitas we need to choose. But this is a field choice. And those who belong to Compagnia delle Opere probably have to make a very clear-cut decision. This is not just to say because we are the coolest ones or the most intelligent ones, but rather to show that we can make profits and we can produce. I have nothing against profits. I mean, I have to make profits even in where I live and work, but profits have to be made in a given way. And then third, besides stabilitas, in order to become discernment, we need humilitas. And that's basically the longest chapter in the chapter of San Benedictine. So humilitas vis-a-vis ourselves as well, being capable of accepting our own limitations. And as Dave said before, if there's a mistake in a productive system, that mistake has to be corrected. That has to be the case. However, in human beings, this is not the case. What makes us human is our weakness, basically. But that weakness, that frailty, has to become a true horizon, and this should open up to collaboration. The best way to help human beings stand out from difficult moments is not competition. Artificial intelligence has shown us that the best way to, in a way, make the best out of these systems is collaboration and not competition. And this is very interesting. So, humilitas, humbleness, which basically induces us to think that the other human being is not an impediment to our happiness, but rather a conditio sine qua non. It is a necessary prerequisite. To do so, however, we have to acknowledge the fact that artificial intelligence never contradicts what we say. Apparently, if I pose a question, those are the questions with the best questions ever asked. For example, I wrote a book with other people, and when I asked the artificial intelligence to make a comment on that book, the system replied that my chapter, the chapter I wrote, was the best out of the many chapters written by the others. But besides that, we also have to stress how difficult it is to entertain dialogue. In the Genesis chapter, when God created the human being, there was this mention of the rib. Actually, the rabbis say that the human being is basically somebody who is similar to me, but also the opposite to me, because we grow through dialogue, in dialogue, but also in communication. So probably with artificial intelligence, we stress a lot dialogue, but there is not so much true communication, and this is actually what we should experiment. And I'd like to close on another dimension that has been frequently mentioned by you today, which is time. We are all obsessed with speed. We believe that everything can be solved if we become faster. In fact, everything can be solved in the Benedictine tradition, not because we're faster, but because we have the right pace. And this is something that has often been stressed, not so much by spiritual master, but Compagnia delle Opere Marche Sud. Last year, we entertained a dialogue, myself and the director of the HR of the Racing Bulls HR team, the issue we were discussing. So a Formula One racing team and a monastery, two centers of excellence. I am the son of a lorry driver, of a truck driver, so I asked actually what it meant for them to change tires, because that's a very interesting thing during a race. The result is not so much given by the speed of each individual, but rather by the pace, by the rhythm that is created within the team. So this is so true, so very true, that if, for example, in training, if we see that the person is actually is working too fast, we tell this person to slow down, because if he slows down, we can go faster together. So it's important to rediscover the beauty of working and going and walking together at the same pace. This is something we need to discover, because this way we can use artificial intelligence to improve our situation. So discretio, stabilitas, humilitas. Thank you very much. And pace, rhythm, pace. Wonderful. This last insight has been really very beautiful. So very briefly, let us try and sum up, not so much actually to close the session, but rather to offer new insights. Artificial intelligence is not neutral, but it is not applied in a company that is neutral itself. It is always used in an organization that already has its own idea of work, of profit, of efficiency, of power, of success. And the direction we're going depends on us. It's our own decision. And since the AI enables things that were not visible before, it makes visible exactly the things that a company wants to become. And here too lie our decisions. So we've understood that there is no automatic relationship between innovation and replacement. We've understood that the difference does not lie in the software or in the algorithm. The difference stems in what we decide to do. The first decision concerns the end, the objective. So why do we want to be more efficient? What's the ultimate goal of becoming more efficient? What's the pattern of this? Efficiency is not telling us where we have to go. Efficiency is giving us a possibility. However, we need somebody capable of understanding the good towards which this possibility is to be directed. We've also seen that a system can analyze more data than human beings. It can identify anomalies or predict failures. They can do many things better than us. But being responsible, as they've said, does not only mean that we are basically taking on the last bottom. We are truly responsible when we understand what is happening, when we are aware of the tool, when we have kind of questioned ourselves on this, when we have the actual authority. This is what the Pope terms accountability in the encyclical. So when the person can question the decision and can intervene, and when they are accountable for the consequences. Machines can't do that. And then there's a third decision that concerns the meaning of work. And this brings us back to what we addressed last year. What is work? Work is not the amount of output, the quantity of output we produce every half an hour, let's say. But as Emmanuel Munet said, working means making a man while that man is doing a thing, a certain thing. So I was very much struck by a research study carried out by the Harvard Business University that talks about work. Productivity at work. The study stems from an interview to 2,000 knowledge workers, and it draws on previous research study carried out earlier on the loneliness of people at work. Based on this recent study, we have seen that the AI, this feeling of loneliness is enhanced. So AI is like a ghost in your office. They're there, they're efficient, but they're never truly present. Interestingly, 52% of these 2,000 interviewees say that they feel more lonely, and 94% of these 52% do not work remotely from home, but rather they work in their office, they work in teams. And why do they feel lonely? They feel lonely probably because of the reasons that we've heard before. If they do not look at their work, as we've said before, if they are not basically supported by somebody telling them that they're precious in their work, that they can be, in a way, improved in their work, well, if you don't have somebody supporting you, you end up feeling lonely, and they cannot express themselves. So basically, love is at the beginning of our decisions. And probably the question that we can end the session with is the following. Now that artificial intelligence is giving us so much efficiency, what do we truly choose to love? So my invitation to you is to discover and to try and find an answer during the sessions of this meeting that starts today and that will talk about these very interesting topics for the next 5 days. I'd like to remind you in this respect that if you support the Rimini meeting, we can contribute to build this wonderful place of beauty. On the fairground, you find the counters Dona Ora, characterized by the red heart. And if you support the meeting, you can also have tax advantages when you do a tax declaration every year. Thank you very much, and thanks a lot to our dear guests.
Questo è un luogo che genera dialogo,
Qualcuno che si impegna, che si batte.
che approfondisce la conoscenza e sostiene la fiducia. È un crocevia dove si incontra chi desidera il vero, il bello, il giusto e il bene. È una testimonianza di speranza nel cuore ferito, del presente. E tutto questo esiste anche grazie a te.